Wheelhouse DNA.
Even with the good stuff, that's what I was, finding to be dangerous is when there is the great stuff and you're reading all these amazing things and people have wonderful opinions of you, just the fact that you're putting your value and self-worth in that and up to people that you don't even know. I think that's where I was like, okay, this is scary. I shouldn't be caring about that. I should be caring about what my close friends think of me.
From Wheelhouse DNA and ACAST, this is Comfort Food, a show about life, loss, grief, celebration, and the meals that support us through it all. I'm your host, Kelly Rizzo. I'm very thrilled to introduce my guests today because they have both been such an amazing presence in my life over the past 2 years since losing my husband. He's an actor and she was a nurse before becoming a mental health advocate through their shared nonprofit called the Lemons Foundation. They host their own podcast called The Squeeze about all things mental health. And these two really walk the walk. Not only have they supported me through such a difficult time, but they are so open and lovely and really work hard to also support those with mental health difficulties. It was an absolute pleasure to have them in the studio. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Taylor and Taylor Lautner. Well, Taylor and Tay, Taylor and Taylor, Tay and Taylor, I am so happy to have you guys here. This is a little bit of deja vu from when I was on your podcast very recently.
Yes.
But here we are now.
This is exciting.
It's still a cozy vibe because your podcast, The Squeeze, is in your house. You set up this beautiful room that's very, very cozy in your own home. And so it is very inviting. And I try to make this feel like that too.
Oh yeah.
Kind of.
I'm very cozy. Also, this pillow behind me is so comfortable.
Yeah, we're gonna have to steal a tip or two you got here.
I know. I might just leave with this pillow.
I wanted to say that, people might think that was the first time that we had met was on your podcast, but it's not. And I want to tell people who do not know how we met because it is still a very special time for me. And it was a very important meeting and memory that I'll take with me forever. But it was about 7 to 10 days after Bob passed away. So January of 2022. And Jason Kennedy hosted a little prayer group night at his house, almost a little mini church service at his home with Pastor Judah Smith and just a few friends. It was maybe 10 people.
Yeah.
That was pretty small.
Yeah. And you guys were there. And I brought Candace Cameron Bure and my sister Kristen. And it was such a special night. It was still so raw for me because it was so new.
Yeah.
It had just happened about a week or so before. But something like that was what I didn't know that I needed. Mm-hmm. And you guys were all so kind and thoughtful and helpful and healing just to be around people who, just wanted to lend a helping hand and just be like, hey, even though we don't know you, like you're strangers right now, like we got you. Yeah. And it's just something I'll remember forever. And I'm just so grateful to you guys that you were so kind then. And I'm grateful to you now for being here and everything in between.
Oh
so
yeah, that was a special night. I credit my husband for that because he will never say this, but he's the one that called Jason and was like, hey, we should do this. So this was
what?
Yeah,
this was your idea? You're okay. I see you're not wanting to take credit, but
Jason and I talked about it. And I remember being on the phone with him and just being like, because obviously the world knew of the news, and he mentioned that he had met you before, you didn't know each other well, but you knew
we were
each other.
asking him talking about him meeting Bob and interviewing him and stuff like that. So I think that's how that came up.
And then I was like, oh, you kind of know her? And he's like, yeah. I was like, I can't imagine what she's going through right now. And I can't imagine what we could offer her. But is it worth just reaching out and just saying, if you want, we would love to do this for you. And we will keep it very small and, bring whoever you think could get anything from it. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, it's worth a shot. We didn't think you were going to agree to it because it was so fresh. But then, when he called me and he was like, yeah, she's going to come. She's going to bring Candace. I was like, wow.
It was very special. Well, now that means I'm very, very touched knowing that you also were, that you guys kind of planned this together. And that is something I'll remember forever.
Yeah, that's so true.
What you guys did to bring people together and host a little church prayer group in someone's house just to give me some comfort. Somebody that you didn't know, who Jason barely knew, and to go out of your way to show somebody that type of support was just very wonderful. So I just think it speaks volumes of the type of people you are. So thank you. And Taylor, like now knowing that you were instrumental in that just means even more to me. So
we're thankful we got you and your friendship out of it. Yeah. Sure.
And then getting to do your podcast was very special. Can you just tell us a little bit about, I mean, obviously I know about it because I was on it, but for people who let's say don't know, since it is still newer, tell us a little bit about the concept for it, how you got the idea, and then how it's been going.
Girl, Tay?
Yeah. I mean, the idea was very random. I'm not like a podcast listener, neither is Taylor. So I kind of just woke up one day and had the idea to start.
I mean, you didn't used to be a podcast listener.
This is correct. I did not used to be one. But I just kind of like woke up one day and was like, I think we need to do a podcast. Because, we're both passionate about mental health. I worked as a COVID nurse, and then I ended up having to leave the hospital due to mental health reasons. And then when I left, I started a blog that was mental health based called Lemons by Tay. And then that turned into our nonprofit called the Lemons Foundation. And then that morphed into The Squeeze, which is our mental health podcast.
Girl Tay, like, she wakes up with a lot of ideas. It's almost like while she's sleeping, she's thinking of things that she can be doing. And she'll just wake up in the morning and be like, we need to do this. And I'm like, let me get my coffee first. But yeah, it was one morning and she was just like, I think, we already had been passionate about mental health and, been doing some things in that space. But she's like, I think we need to do a podcast. And I was like, we? And she's like, well, and she's smart. She knows me. She knows I was going to be hesitant at first, as I am with everything. So she's like, I can do it, and, we can just, like, say you're my full-time husband, part-time co-host, so you can join whenever you want to. And so we started with that, and I was just going to be, like, a guest host. We filmed our first couple episodes, and I was hooked, and I was like, yeah, I love this. Like, it's definitely something that we should be doing together. So, yeah.
And I knew you were going to be good at it, and I knew he was going to be, like, scared. I mean, he's so well-spoken, and he's so like approachable and wise and very easy to talk to. So I know he would be good at it because that's podcast is right. I mean, at the core, it's talking, and he's very good at that. But you disagree? But yeah, I knew once he like got a little comfortable with it, he would be like, sign me up. And that's what happened. We've been doing it for almost a year now.
I know. Vulnerable conversations inside our house.
Yep.
Well, it's interesting that you know your own dynamic very well, that you have to know your partner and you have to know how to approach things with them.
Yeah.
And you have to know, like, for instance, I did this with Bob all the time where even if it was because we would make like silly TikTok videos and stuff together. And every single time he would fight me on it.
Yep.
I'd be like, I have this hilarious idea. And I'm like, I'm going to pitch it to him. And he's going to resist. And he's going to say no. But then he's going to agree to it, and then he's going to love it.
Yeah.
And every time that's how it went every single time. But I knew I was going to get that resistance in the beginning.
Yep. Same thing.
Very common.
Same thing.
Very common thing in our house.
But you're right. Like, I would say 90% of the time, the things that I, am hesitant of, scared of, whatever, I end up loving the most. So it's definitely been a lesson for me in the past few years that, like, things that you're afraid of, you got to, like, push yourself outside of your comfort zone, because that ends up being typically for me, like, some of the stuff that, I'm most proud of.
Exactly. I've learned that too, that it's really when you kind of dig deep and you do something that I never would have done this normally.
Yeah.
And you do it, and then it goes usually pretty well. And then you're like, why didn't I do this sooner?
Yep.
Or I'm so glad I did this. I went
Yeah.
out of my comfort zone, and it pays off.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of comfort zone, obviously we're going to dig a little deep here, but I thought that I would do something for you guys that would make a conversation a little bit more comfy and a little bit more cozy. And I know that you had told us a little bit about what your favorite comfort foods are, because, coming here, the name of this podcast is
Sure
Comfort
do.
Foods. So, I'm going to feed you guys. So we're going to bring it out here in just one second, but I want to hear from each of you what your favorite comfort food is and why. Okay. And then, we may or may not have some of it for you.
Okay.
Oh boy. I think mine is Chick-fil-A.
You're a big Chick-fil-A girl.
Yeah. I feel like when I think of comfort food, I think of like what do I want when I'm like emotional, or when it's my time of the month and I like need a little some comfort. So that's
probably bad to say that Chick-fil-A has been kind of a go-to for me. Like, and I can't say that I have lots of hangover days anymore. They're very few and far between. But when I do, that's my go-to.
I feel like in my mind that like comfort food and hangover food are like comparable. Like I just like
most of the time.
So like comfort food to me is something that's gonna like, taste good and like feel good in the moment. Maybe not
in the long term.
Maybe not in the long term, but going in it tastes good.
Yeah.
All right, Taylor, what's yours?
When I think of comfort food, I think of like this time of year, like at night where we like want to watch a Christmas movie or something and cuddle up on the couch with our dogs and a fire and have like a nice bowl of chili.
Well, we've got some Chick-fil-A and chili for you guys.
Wow.
And I think one of you guys also said hot chocolate.
That was my other one.
Okay.
That was my cozy one.
So we'll see how well that goes with Chick-fil-A and chili, but we have chocolate for you guys too.
I'm here for it.
Wow.
I'm here for it.
I know. So it's going to be kind of a smorgasbord of stuff. So here we go. Stuff is happening. We have
getting a lot more comfortable in here.
Right?
Okay.
So apparently I get my...
Oh, wow.
Look at this.
This is the most beautiful plate I think I've ever seen.
I mean, look at this hot chocolate. This is quite the combination.
Isn't this hilarious?
Oh, my.
When have you ever seen marshmallows and Chick-fil-A like at the same time?
And a bowl of chili.
My gosh.
So funny. It's the cutest looking hot chocolate with marshmallows I've ever seen.
But did you see the little peppermint?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And the Hershey's Kisses.
Wow. I think this might be my dream plate.
This is,
this
is pretty dreamy.
For people who are listening, let me explain this platter that was just brought out in front of us.
Oh, yeah.
We have a bowl of very delicious looking chili with some shredded cheese and sour cream. Mm-hmm. So, Taylor, this is your favorite thing. Mm-hmm. Then we have a Chick-fil-A sandwich with all of the sauces.
All of them.
All of the Chick-fil-A sauces. And then some Chick-fil-A nuggets and the waffle fries. So
and then the cutest cup of hot chocolate with marshmallows you've ever seen.
Really adorable, very Christmassy looking cup of hot chocolate with marshmallows and a candy cane and you're right, and Hershey's Kisses.
I will come back and film with you whenever you need.
So, wait, first off, also for people who don't know, even before we get into really what started this whole journey for you guys, is how did you guys meet?
His sister introduced us. I had met her a couple times through a mutual friend. And I think like after the second time we had like hung out, she called Taylor and was like, I just met your future wife. You need to like throw a game night so like she can be one of my friends and I can bring her over.
No way.
Yeah. And it's just like crazy to think about because like the amount of time I actually spent with her wasn't that much. Like,
I know.
Time.
I wonder what it was that she like saw in you.
Because it was like, both times were in group settings. Like it wasn't like we were having like heart-to-heart, one-on-one discussions. But
maybe that shows just how well, A, she knows you, and B, there's something that was exuding from you that she just saw as like, wait, this is going to work out.
I know, because my sister's very, like, very protective of me. So also her calling up and being like, I found somebody that I think would be great for you and that you would love.
Yeah.
It's like even more so, like, really, because she wants to keep everybody away from me.
And I knew that she was like very protective of him. So when she had texted my friend and I being like, hey, my brother's doing a game night at his house. You guys want to come? My friend and I were so confused because we were like, why is she like inviting me? Like, I don't know her. Like, I know how protective she is of Taylor. And like, I'm shocked that she like doesn't really know me, but she's inviting me over. And I was like, well, she must know I'm like normal.
Yeah.
I'd be fine over there. I don't know. So we were both like side texting, being like, what the heck? We're like, oh, well, games, let's go. That'll be fun.
So yeah, we did the game night. We were on the same team for running charades. I like to think that's where our chemistry originally began.
Yeah, it is.
We crushed it together. And then, yeah, I kept like inviting you over in like group settings a few times, but
So you had chaperones.
yeah.
Yeah. And I never knew that he was hitting on me. Like, I didn't know of the setup for a while. And Taylor was,
A long time.
I mean, it wasn't a long time. But yeah,
Okay.
it was
Like
a couple
a few
weeks.
hangs
few weeks.
that you-
But he's just, I mean, he's so kind and is so like not like, I don't know, you're just like a very kind person. And I never really had like a guy kind of like, what's the word? Like court me in that, like, what is that called when you're like courting someone? Is that the right word?
Be very chivalrous and
Yeah.
a gentleman.
Yeah, no, he was so like,
Basically,
just, like,
what she's saying is I have no game. That's what she really means.
that's not true. You were being very kind to me.
You know what? I think that also comes with maturity, and that comes with, nowadays, just even hearing about this dating world, which was so daunting to me to even have to think about that again. I was like,
Yeah.
whatever happened to romance and courting and
Yeah.
being a gentleman? And, and so it's nice to hear that still exists,
Yeah.
considering that you guys are, because I'm a little bit older, considering that you are younger. I'm like, it's nice to hear that even people younger than I am are doing that.
I feel like if a girl were to like write up how they would want to be, like, you just like weren't aggressive with it, which I say that in a nice way. Like, guys.
Yes, good for you.
Yeah, you like were just
That's
genuinely
great game. That's
talking
great
with me
game.
and getting to know me. So there was game.
Okay.
But I also just was not looking for a relationship. So I was like,
Yeah.
there was like, I wasn't looking for anything. Also, like, my friend just invited me over to her brother's house. I'm not gonna like
Be hitting on
be
her
hitting
brother.
on her
Brother's
brother.
house, right.
Like the first time we're hanging out, that's weird. So I just wasn't even like, that wasn't even an option. So maybe there was something, but I was not even paying attention. But hey, it worked out. We are here
Yeah,
6
it
years
worked out.
later.
Yep.
You are eating
know.
Chick-fil-A and chili together.
Right? This is surreal.
So obviously your entire journey with, getting to the podcast and the foundation and your blog and everything was because of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you said it started because you were working in healthcare, but can you tell me a bit more about that? Like the mental health angle of it?
Yeah. I graduated nursing school in 2019. I was never going to go into a hospital. I loved like surgery, so I was just going to do like outpatient surgery. But everything closed down because if it was an elective surgery, COVID like shut it down. So I was just like sitting at home and I was like, I just did all of this school. I really want to put like everything I've learned to use. I'm going to apply to this one hospital that I loved and that I was like the most impressed by in my clinicals. If I get the job, then I get the job. If not, then I'll just like wait for this all to pass and then go back to the outpatient surgery once that starts back up again.
It was the only hospital you applied to, right?
Yeah, it was
You were
literally
like,
the only one.
I'll do this.
I just
if
can't
get
believe
it.
you graduated in 2019 and then this all hits the next year. That's
Yeah.
crazy to me.
So yeah, I got the job probably like August, I'd say, of 2020. And then I had worked during like the really intense, like if I always say that March of COVID, like the beginning of COVID was more scary as in like we didn't know what it was
Yeah.
in the healthcare world, and like there wasn't enough like PPE, like the protection wear for the healthcare workers to make sure they were protected. So that's kind of like that was this more so the scare behind it.
But the rush
the rush and like the influx of patients and all of that was really the time that I had worked from, I'd say like November to like February.
Yeah, the end of that year.
Yeah. And it was just like insane. We've kind of been talking about it more, and it's something that I've like very much have dove into in therapy, but just the amount of stuff the healthcare workers went through during that time is kind of like insane and kind of crazy that it's not like talked about as much. But like the first night I had started on my own. I was working night shift, so that was already kind of a lot, but we had upped our patient ratios. So normally my unit, you only have 4 patients. I had 5. My charge nurse, who's like the lady that's, running the floor, she was off in a monitor room because I was on a cardiac floor. So all of our patients had heart monitors on because they were all higher risk. She was in that room because our monitor tech was sick. So she had to go in there, but we were so short staffed. So we didn't have anyone to cover. So she was in there. How old am I? 22, 23?
Yep.
At this time. And, little nurse Tay, like
so young, yeah.
confident in myself, like knowing obviously I can trust myself and my knowledge, but it was so scary. We had these patients, like we had patients that were on ventilators and I'm not trained in that. So we just had patients that their acuity was so high. And I was just running the first night, I was like running in and out of rooms because you have to put your gown, your double mask, the gloves, like everything. You go into the room and then you come out, take it all off, and then re-put it all back on and go into the next room. And it was just a cycle of that. And after a couple hours of it, I literally just was bawling just because I was so overwhelmed and not knowing what to do, because I literally would have patients being like, am I going to live? Asking me that. And I was like having to think of something to say that was encouraging but not promising, because, I would leave and I'd be like, I knew some of the people that asked me, I knew they weren't going to make it, and some of them didn't. So
it was emotionally,
yeah,
mentally, but also physically exhausting.
Oh, yeah. And the nursing profession, like nurses are truly just like some of the strongest people ever. When you're working, you just don't like think about your needs. I would literally like not go to the bathroom for like 8 hours because there's people's lives are at stake. So I'm not going to go like take a 15 to eat my sandwich or whatever. Like if I don't get this patient this medication, like they could go into this or whatever could happen. So it was just a lot of fight or flight for months at a time and never really was able to come down. And even on my days off, my manager would call and be like, hey, we're short tonight, which we were every night because we had taken so many patients in because so many people were sick. And she's like, can you come and just do vitals for a couple hours? So I would go in sometimes from like 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. to help take vitals because I knew what it was like to be short-staffed and not have help. So I wanted to help my coworkers out. But yeah, it was just...
We would be like sleeping. We went to sleep for the night and your phone would start ringing at like midnight. And it would be like, we need you to come in. Like,
yeah.
She's not supposed to be in, but they're just like desperate. Yeah. And she always had such a hard time saying no to that because she knows what it is like at the hospital. It
was a very hard time to set a boundary, and I also wasn't good at setting boundaries then. But how do you set that boundary there? And like
I'm not going to help somebody live is what you're thinking in your head.
Yeah. And I mean, as a new nurse at 22, I'm not going to be like, no, today's my day off. I'm going to go in. So yeah, it was just a lot of that for a while.
And then it got to a point where you just had to...
Yeah, it got to a point where Taylor confronted me about it, but not... It was a very brief conversation. He was just kind of like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I just worked like the past 3 nights. I'm just tired. And he was like, no, but actually, like, are you okay? And then we didn't say anything after that. I just kind of like took it and started to kind of process it. But it honestly took months. I would say that conversation was probably in February, March. And I didn't leave the hospital till August. So it really took like months for me to kind of be like, am I okay? But I'd never like dealt with something so severe like that, my own mental health. So like I've seen people and been a part of people's lives that have dealt with such severe mental health trauma, but I didn't know how to process it. And it actually took me getting COVID, not from working, which is ironic. I never got it from COVID. I got it from him. I got it from visiting him at work.
He visited me on set and I got it the day before she came and she showed up for like Memorial Day weekend.
Yes.
I had like a long
don't even
weekend, and I gave it to her while she was there, and then we both had to quarantine for 14 days inside a hotel room.
Yeah. And I ended up just getting it really bad. Like I was able to fly home, but I was out of work for probably like a month and a half, 2 months.
My gosh.
I couldn't like do the laundry. Like I had no energy. It took that, I think.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't ever going to quit. Like I couldn't. Nursing is something I was so passionate about, and I did love my job, but I needed to take a step back. And I think it took me physically, like not even being able to go. I literally had to go on disability for that. And it took that for me to kind of be like, okay, let's actually reevaluate that. And then I feel like I quit. And then I feel like that's actually when it got hard, because I was finally out of the environment and I was able to process what had actually happened. So I feel like after that was when I really started to see the effects.
You were still like on the go, not looking backwards. But as soon as you finally did step back,
Yeah.
I feel like when everything, really started to hit you.
And then what was that like, it hitting you?
Yeah, I didn't really know. I kind of thought I was like losing my mind for a little bit. I think it kind of started with the depression of it all really hitting me. Also, like at this time, they were doing studies, and healthcare workers and like nurses in particular were showing the same PTSD signs of like war veterans.
I was just going to say,
like,
it's got to have a parallel.
Yeah. So that's like how our brains were literally acting like. So me, not thinking that I was one of those. Not because I was above it, but just because I had never like dealt with it. And I was like, I'm still functioning. Like, I guess I'm fine. But I would say there was a few months of me having like zero emotion. I always say we went to New York in January of 22. And for work, and it was my first time going. I was so excited. It was snow. Like, it was like a dream for me. And I remember we were sitting at dinner, and we were there with Jason and Lauren and our other friend. And I'm like sitting there and I'm looking around and I'm like, I don't feel any emotion right now. Like I've really just felt numb. Why is that? Like I should be really happy right now. Like why aren't I feeling anything? And I honestly like maybe kind of scared me. I feel like I said something to you. I think that was like the first time I ever kind of voiced something, and we don't do this now. We've had a lot of communication and therapy, but at the time he was taking it personally because I was like, I don't feel happy. And he was like, well, what's wrong? Like, what did I do? Like, how can I?
What am I immediately.
Understandable.
Like, I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why am I not making you happy? Like, what can I do to fix this? And
I was like, well, no, it's not you. It's, I don't know what this is. And that kind of went on for a little bit. And then that started to get a little better. And then it turned into like dissociation. So I would dissociate so bad from conversations. Like I would be mid conversation with Taylor and he'd be like, are you there? What is happening? But then it got to a point where I was forgetting details like about my life that I knew, and I knew that it was in my brain, but I couldn't like find it in there. Like
that scared you.
Yeah.
Every time that happened, it truly scared you.
Yeah. Like random little things that like I would know. And I used to pride myself off my memory. Like I would beat my parents in the memory game as a 6-year-old. Like I pride myself with it.
She just all of a sudden like would blank on the name of one of our favorite restaurants. Like she just
like I was like, I know I've been there, but I can't tell you where it is, what kind of food it is, who we've been with. Like I'm looking at the name of the restaurant. Like you could say, do you want to go to Chick-fil-A? And I'm like, okay, Chick-fil-A. I know it's a restaurant. I don't know where it is. I don't know what kind of food it is. I know I've been there.
So interesting.
This is so random. But like the chain smokers, like I know who they are. We were talking, I was thinking about them, but I couldn't remember their name. And I was literally like, what's the EDM? What's the name of the EDM? The guys, they're brothers, I think, or they're related. And it was like the chain smokers. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, wait, why the frick did I not remember that? So it was just like things that I would know, like forgetting that that's called chili, like things like that. Were happening. And this restaurant one kind of was the one that like tipped me over the edge and finally got me into therapy, because I was like, this is scary. I'm forgetting these things that I know, but I don't understand what's going on.
That was the final straw.
Yeah.
The restaurant one, you were like, okay, this is scaring me. I don't know what it is, and I need to talk to somebody about it.
I forgot the name of Chick-fil-A. This is the final straw.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. So, I mean, from there I went into therapy, and it's obviously an ongoing thing for me, but it was just, I let things go very easily. And I therapist was like, I was telling him stories about what had happened in these things. And I was like, but it's okay. And he's like, stop ending your stories with, but it's okay, or it was needed, or whatever. He's like, what you went through was traumatic, and I need you to like actually understand that. And once I like finally started to understand that, and he was like, you can feel sorry for yourself. What you went through was horrible. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, because I've never like been told I can do that.
To acknowledge that it was a big deal,
Yeah.
and it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to not say it was okay.
Yeah, because I definitely like push things down, or not even on purpose, but because I don't want to burden someone, or I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. Like in my head, I'm overreacting. So I definitely like pushed a lot of it down. And through therapy, that definitely brought it up. And then we also got our brain scanned, which was very helpful because it did show that I had PTSD, and it made me feel.
Dr. Amen, I was going to do that.
It made me feel so much better knowing, and people were like, isn't that scary? Like Taylor was a little nervous.
I didn't want to. She had to force me to go. I was so scared. I'm
was
like, I don't even want to know what's going on in there.
I pulled a wife. I was like, this is my wife favor. Please come with me and do it. But it honestly, like, it made me feel so much better. Like knowing like, okay, I'm not actually crazy. Like there's something going on in there.
Like your anxiety is right here. I can see it's purple, like it's,
you haven't done it.
I had the appointment, and then I kind of chickened out at the last minute. I kind of want to do it again, but it was one of those things where I was just more curious.
Yeah.
And also because I do get anxiety, I was like, I wonder if that'll show up, because it kind of does, right? Isn't that like what shows up too?
Yeah.
So I kind of was interested in that aspect, but I still might do it. Let's say issues, struggles, going through mental health things from your past happened before Taze did, right? So did you kind of feel that like, oh, I've gone through some things in the past, like now I'm more equipped to help her? Or did they parallel each other in terms of, oh, like I know what she's feeling? Or were they totally different situations where you're like, I don't know how to best help her?
I think it worked out great because I never, like, my mental health journey started way earlier, but I never addressed it or even allowed myself to think about it. Like, I had a different looking upbringing in teenage years. And I think I just never really thought how that abnormal upbringing could affect me. And I just never really allowed myself to think about that. And I think how many times have I said I think? I think when Tay started going through her journey, it allowed me to be like, oh, like I should, if I'm so concerned and worried about her well-being and asking her if she's okay, I should probably be asking myself that same question, because I think I know the answer deep down. I'm just scared to think about it.
Wow.
So they really kind of started together, because I think it took me, caring so much about her mental health to acknowledge my own as well.
That's so interesting. So the journey started at different times, but the processing and the working through it went.
We started like.
Was it
together.
about at the same time?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And now I guess, for people who, let's say, don't know, yours was more, and I don't want to speak for you, of course, but when, you had this, huge movie franchise and all of the, this attention and fame, was it just processing how, like, because that's a very weird world to live in and it's not normal. Yeah. And was it just relating to that world and like, how do I fit in here? And like, what is this doing to me?
Yeah. And I mean, I ended up taking a step back from the industry shortly after we started dating.
I think he like had the foresight that he did need a break mentally, but I don't think he knew what that looked like. And I think that's when it was both of us kind of addressing our mental health together for the first time. That was it. But I still think you had the foresight to take that step back.
It was like you knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And you knew like there was something there. You just hadn't really dealt with it yet.
Yeah, I think, I knew that there was so many different aspects of life that I missed out on and never really got to experience, still don't really get to. And, I'm not able to give my full attention to what actually matters most in life. If I'm stuck in this, entertainment industry caring, so much about, my perception and whether or not a movie's gonna flop or not. And I think I just knew that I needed to focus on, other things in life rather than that, because if I'm in that world, it's all consuming. And I'm very I'm very critical of myself. So I take things personally. So I'm not the best equipped to be in, a position where you're like constantly judged all the time.
And I mean, that was your life for like years and years too, was constantly, being criticized or being in the media somehow.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Because then if you're even getting the good stuff, then you're still like, oh, what did they say? Oh, they said something good. Oh, are they going to say something good again? And then it's the cycle of, and then all of a sudden, if there's something not good and you're so used to the good stuff, then it really freaks you out.
Or even when there's nothing at all, then you're like, well, like,
why aren't people talking about me?
Yeah.
But yeah, even with the good stuff, that's what I was, finding to be dangerous is when there is the great stuff and you're reading all these amazing things and people have wonderful opinions of you. Just the fact that you're putting your value and self-worth in that and up to people that you don't even know. I think that's where I was like, okay, this is scary. I shouldn't be caring about that. I should be caring about what my close friends think of me, what my family thinks of me, what I think of myself. I shouldn't need to be affirmed, by random strangers who have an opinion of me without knowing who I am as a person. Yeah. And I was certainly caring too much about that. So, yeah, I think that journey started earlier for me, but I did not address it until we both, addressed both of our, things.
Well, the fact that even at the age you were thinking these things is so healthy and is so smart. It shows how much insight you have, because a lot of people never get to that point. Yeah. They will be caught up in that cycle endlessly and can never get out of it. And then it starts to control you to a point where it's all consuming.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were able just to even recognize that and know that that's not what you wanted and to take a step back is so important. And I'm sure looking back, you're probably pretty proud of that action, knowing that, maybe could have gone a different direction.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm very, very happy about it. And I finally and I wondered at that time, I'm like, will I ever be able to go back to it? I don't think so. But I would say I'm finally at a place now where I do feel like I needed that time and space away to realign, what I, care about and, how I see myself. And, I feel like I can tiptoe back into it because I have my head on straight a little bit more, I don't know.
I mean, we started dating when Taylor filmed his last project that he did for a while. And I got to see taking the step back, him going to a movie theater for the first time in like 15 years. And where I'm a normal person and I do these normal things all the time, like him going into a grocery store for the first time in like 10 years. He's like, whoa, like what? Like just like things like that, getting to see the transformation of, which I know when we started dating, I was like, this guy can't get any better. He's great. And every year I feel like he keeps impressing me by like his mental growth. And like this year where you're at, seeing him like ready and excited to get back into film is really cool. And it's really cool to see how his mentality of how he views himself change. So I'm excited for him. I'm proud of him because you've done the work.
What I'm so in awe of with both of you guys is just that the support that you give each other. And I'm sure, and once again, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm sure having not had her by your side through that, you probably wouldn't have had all of these realizations or been able to get to the place where you are. And same with you. Like, he was the one saying, like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Like, are you sure you're okay?
Yeah.
Without him really getting in there, like, would you be where you are now? So having each other as that support is, it's very beautiful to see, but I'm sure was the most instrumental thing in getting to where you are now.
Yeah.
Massive.
We are like actually best friends. Like, we work together. Like, we spend so much time together. It's stupid. We were joking the other day and we were like, should we like spend some more time apart or something? We're just together all the time, but we love hanging out with each other. We love working together. But I think going through all this stuff and going through COVID as well, like our mental health alone, like COVID was just an adjustment for everyone. Our first like year of marriage, everyone's like, how's it been? The first year is the hardest. And we're like, when is it going to get hard?
You had like 30 years together is what it feels like.
Genuinely, it feels, it's kind of annoying that we've only, not annoying, but we've been married for 1 year, but we've been together for 6. So we've been through a lot of life together and a lot of adjustments and a lot of, tough conversations, communications, a lot of therapy. And we laugh all the time because we're like, when is it going to get hard? Like, what is it going to creep up?
Let me throw this out there. My parents, who've been together for 50 years now.
Wow.
And ever since I've been born, they've worked together also.
Oh, wow.
So they've worked together for over 40 years.
Jeez.
And get along and love each other and still are, friends and actually, don't want to kill each other every day. Okay. So just throwing that out there.
I like
it. It does exist, and it can exist. It can happen.
I love that. Yeah. The future is bright.
It's right for us.
Sharon and Santo Rizzo can be your role models.
Yes.
At what point do you or have you drawn this line of how much you want to share of this journey publicly? Because Taylor, you said part of this issue was you were so in the public eye and it got to be a problem.
Yeah.
And now you're taking something that's so private and so personal and putting it out there on your podcast or on other podcasts, whatever it is. Is there a line now when it comes to what you're going to share?
Yeah, I don't know what. I don't think the line has been defined. I think we kind of. It's a lot looser line than it used to be because I think when so much of your privacy is, taken away from you, you tend to just automatically, squeeze up and just try and protect everything. So I went so many years like not wanting anybody to know anything about my personal life. I didn't want anybody to know what my kitchen looked like. So I would never put pictures or videos from inside my house. Like, when my friends came over, they knew that they couldn't, take photos and put it online of like the inside of my house. Like, I just became so hyper protective of anything private. And that's just like what my automatic reaction was. And what I've learned, and it's understandable why I did that, right. But doing that doesn't make you happy. Like, obviously, I still want to protect some level of privacy, and having some sort of line is important. But I've learned that like starting to share and talk about things that I never ever would have before, and sharing our home with people, like sharing our dogs with people, just like it's so freeing.
Yeah,
it's actually a wonderful feeling, and you're not paranoid the whole time. We talk about such vulnerable topics, but we've found that it's very freeing for us. It's like free therapy for us, being able to just talk about those things rather than needing to hide everything.
Yeah. I don't know, this may be different for you, but in my brain sharing my personal experiences, all of these topics are vulnerable. A lot of people don't share it, but in my mind, it's easier to share that than it is like a video from giving a house tour. I feel like I would rather share my deepest, darkest secrets, stuff that we've talked about, than I would rather like give a house tour. In my brain, it's different.
Well, I'll probably take a guess as to maybe why that is. What you're doing and sharing your vulnerable side is helping people versus, is a house tour going to help anybody? No. And I think you realize that when you can put your deepest, darkest secrets out there and be vulnerable and share something that you never would have before about your private life and something that maybe was traumatic for you, and now you're sharing it to, thousands, millions of people, but it's helping people. And so why would you draw a line, or where would you draw that line?
Yeah.
If you're like, okay, I can do this, but it's not going to help anybody, but I can cross the line and it's going to help tons of people, then you don't draw the line, because what would you give to be able to help all those people?
Yeah. We'll see where that line is, but so far we've yet to get to a place where we're like...
I was going to say, it's been cool to like watch when we like film our solo episodes, or even when we have guests. Like sometimes he'll like say stuff or admit to stuff. Like we were just filming and Taylor admitted to being a jealous person. I never thought he would like say that.
Yeah, I've never talked about that before.
And he like totally dove into it. It's just the two of us, and I'm like, oh, interesting. Like
I can't believe he admitted to
like
that
he just
outside
like
of our home.
opens up, and we don't like rehearse. We're like, oh, this question sounds good, okay, like because we take a lot of viewer questions. But I just said it, and he was like, oh, dove right in. I was like, oh wow. He keeps doing things like that are surprising to me.
Which tells me that like
it's working.
It does make me feel good to talk about those things.
Yeah.
Right. It is freeing, and that's an interesting thing that you brought up, because I've even noticed over this past almost 2 years now, just crazy, that there were so many things in the very beginning that I'm like, I'm not going to talk about this publicly, because it's just, it's disrespectful to Bob. It's nobody's business. I mean, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And there have been things over the past 2 years, because, I've been talking a lot, you do a lot of interviews, podcast, whatever it is, and things that I'm like, I would never have said that 2 years ago that now I'm saying openly.
Yeah.
And when I say it, I'm like, actually, it was good to share that. It felt good to get that out.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. I get it. But yeah, that line is interesting.
Yeah.
We'll all figure out our lines together.
Yeah. And I mean, what you're doing, and for instance, obviously I went to your event, which was a couple weeks ago now, which was beautiful. And that was your first gala, right? Your first annual foundation event.
Yeah.
And it was so special and so beautiful and really powerful. And just that event, I mean, I'm sure it did very well as well, and, raised a lot of money and brought a lot of awareness. Maybe if you want to talk a little bit more about that, but also why you got to that point, because I think it's also because you had lost a friend.
Yeah.
You had lost a friend to suicide, but then you also had a gentleman there, and I forgot his name, who
Kevin
told his
Hines.
story, which was incredible. So maybe you want to just touch on that a bit.
Yeah. It was our first annual Lemons Foundation Gala, which was cool. We knew we always wanted to do it. And I always told myself, like, when I do this first event, I want to do it on a rooftop, because my friend took his life, and rooftops have a different meaning to me now because of my friend. And Jared is his name. He kind of like opened the world of mental health to me, because he was struggling with bipolar and took his life in a manic episode. And I didn't know that he had bipolar or that he was struggling or anything, because he actually didn't get it until later, which we just found out because we had his mom and sister on the podcast, that you can be diagnosed with bipolar. Like, you're not just born with it if there's like the correct
And a lot of times that is when it comes out, usually in like late teens.
Yeah, and I didn't
20s.
really realize that, but like there could be, your DNA, a traumatic event, or just the right scenario could happen. But anyways, I always told myself, if we do this event, I want to do it on the rooftop just to honor Jared, because he's like a driving force in why I do what I do and why we do what we do. It was just a lot of friends and family. We did it on our 1-year wedding anniversary, because we were like, what else are we going to do with it? We love sentimental things. So we were like, we should like do something. So that's how we spent our wedding anniversary. But we had Kevin Hines talk. He is the survivor of a Golden Gate Bridge. He tried to take his life by jumping off the bridge, and we actually had him on the podcast as well.
Yeah, I was blown away by his story. I was like, where is he going with it? And then I was like, did he jump off the
Yeah.
No, his story is just insane, but we've become, friends with him, and him having the same tie to a roof, jumping off of it. It was just a really good,
to come together.
tie-in. I was like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it here. I want Kevin to speak, and everything just kind of happened, and we put it together in like 5 weeks. Like we really just last minute threw it together.
So you're bringing a positive association now to a roof versus having negative.
Yeah, I mean, I said it that night, but I think it's like really important to state, like, the whole thing was glass, so we could see like the whole view of like downtown, and we see like a beautiful skyline, but people look at that and think that jumping off of that is a easier way out than like seeing tomorrow, because what they're going through is too rough, or they just like can't see a brighter side. And I think that just that perspective is really important, that that we remember, because I forget it a lot too.
So when you guys have gone through PTSD, your traumatic times, when you were dealing with mental health issues, and even friends who have gone through these really, really difficult times, what have you felt was the most helpful to you guys, and what have you felt was the least helpful to you guys?
That's a good question.
I mean, for me, and it probably sounds a bit cliche, but it's just like starting to talk about it. It's just like admitting it to yourself is the first step, and the second step is start talking about it. Because you're not helping yourself if you're just shoving it deeper and deeper down. So, I mean, for me, by far the biggest and most important step was like admit it to myself that I may not be okay. And, I need to talk to somebody about this. And that can be whoever. That can be, a friend, a loved one, a therapist, like
a teacher, a coworker, someone.
Anybody, but just getting it out of your system and voicing it is very freeing, and that will take you to having those conversations will take you to whatever the next step needs to be.
Yeah.
But it's the hardest step, but it's the most important one, and that was the case for me for sure.
Yeah. Right. I think I would agree with that one.
Well, yeah, or things that people did, like let's say friends, family, when you're going through this, that things that friends or family did that you're like, guys, you're just not helping right now.
I feel like I've gone through periods, and I mean, I still do, where like it is just kind of like a roller coaster. And my close friends know that I'm not like a needy friend. Like, I can talk to you once a month and you're still my best friend. But knowing that I kind of go through those things, and like a low maintenance friend, and I've made and lost friends just kind of like along that journey, which is fine. But I think that's kind of been like, some friends have like wanted to reach out more, do more things, and I'm like, nah, like I need space, but not in like a I don't like you way, but in a I can't like process what's going on.
It's kind of just listening to your needs, and sometimes you need a little more, and sometimes you need a little less. And for them, see, the thing with me when I was going through the initial grief stages is when you kind of just wanted to, let's say, be on your own, and then somebody didn't really like, no, I think you really should hang out today. And I'm like, no, don't tell me what I need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me, I'll just say, like, I don't know if I really had anybody like try and shove this opinion down my throat, but I think the general assumption by some people that going to therapy and admitting that, you're not all there and everything's not all perfect is like a failure. Is taking that step and going to therapy or starting to talk about it, means your life is in shambles and you've failed and this is embarrassing. Because it really is just quite the opposite of that. It's a massive step of bravery and you are bettering yourself, which therefore is going to better the people around you that you care for. So it's just, I would love to get, that general opinion on it just out and in the trash, because it's
so true. What's interesting though is about, let's say, grieving. If you lose a loved one, a lot of people who give you advice, they've maybe also been through that.
Yeah.
Like with what you went through, it's one of those things where very few people, if any, can relate to it.
Yeah.
And so when somebody's like, listen, you should do that. You're like, you don't understand what I'm going through.
Yeah.
You don't get it. Like, you haven't been in this situation where sometimes it's hard to get people to even relate to you because they haven't been through what you've been through.
Yeah.
But let's say in grief, usually you can get some decent advice because a lot of people have been there.
Yeah.
If you could go back, let's say, to your 20-year-old self and your 20-year-old self, knowing what you know now, what would be like a piece of advice that you would give yourself, knowing like, hey, you're going to go through this hard time.
Yeah.
Here's what you need to know.
For me, don't care so much about other people's opinions about myself. Like there's going to be and this is what's so dangerous, is there's the highest of highs. You are going to experience the highest of highs where you are on top of the world and it feels like everybody loves you. But then you're also going to, you're going to have a flop or something's going to happen and you're going to feel like you're at the lowest of lows and like the world hates you. And it's just, you're looking at both of them through a magnifying glass, and as difficult as it is, just put your worth and value in things that you actually care about, not that. So if I could just tell myself to just care less, remember who you are, remember, what you want to be known for. I think that would have been a big help.
That's great.
That's really great.
I think mine would be like, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Again, that's a very cliche thing, but I think that, but also like, it's okay to not be okay, but don't live in that. Take that and start to address what you're going through. Like, it's okay to go through something, and let's make sure we're taking the steps, to better yourself and get through it.
To even have the, hindsight to look back and give your younger self such important advice is so important, because now there are people who can listen to this who are going to hear that and be like, all right, I'm going to do this now and implement this now, because it's so important. And I'm just so grateful to you guys, A, for being here, but B, just for being so kind to me over the last couple years. And, I love that we're now reciprocating podcasts. And I know we're going to finish this food. Yeah. There's no way we're leaving all this food here.
Yeah. No, I'm waiting until this mic shuts off to freaking open that
Okay,
Chick-fil-A
so
sauce.
we'll start devouring once we say cut.
Chomping in this mic.
But thank you guys so much for being here. It means so much.
Thank you for having these conversations. This is really great.
They're important to have. So thanks for having them with me. Thanks so much for listening. In the studio today, Girl Taylor had a delicious hot chocolate with oat milk, along with a Chick-fil-A chicken burger, waffle fries, and all the sauces. Definitely comforting. Boy Taylor had a classic bowl of chili. Here's a very simple recipe in case you're craving chili at home. Heat some olive oil in a big soup pot and add some chopped onion. And once that's hot, saute your onion for about 5 minutes and add some ground beef. Break up your beef in the pot and cook for 6 to 7 minutes, or until it's cooked fully through. Add some spices and stir until combined. I like chili powder, cumin, a bit of sugar, tomato paste, garlic powder, salt, pepper, and some cayenne. Then you can add some diced tomatoes, kidney beans, beef broth, and tomato sauce, and stir it up. Let that simmer for at least 20 to 25 minutes, but the longer you let it sit, the better it's going to be. Buon appetito, and thanks for tuning in. Comfort Food is produced by Wheelhouse DNA for Acast. Our executive producers are Fanny Baudry, Cassie Berman, Leah Sutherland, and yours truly, Kelly Rizzo. Our audio producer is Chiara Nonni. Special thanks to Camila Goldenberg and Riley Oval-Rank for production assistance. Our audio engineer is Matthew Blocka. Our editor is Nick Charismi. This podcast is hosted by me, Kelly Rizzo. If you like the show, please rate us 5 stars and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in.